Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd find your seats, please, we'll get ready to begin. Just another quick admin reminder about how we're working these panels this afternoon. You should all have pads and paper and pens in front of you. Please, if you have a question in the panel, once we get through introductory remarks, go ahead and write that down. Hold it up, make eye contact with me or one of the other runners. They'll bring all the questions to me. I'll bring them up here for the panel, and then we'll proceed through your questions until the end of the period. Hope you all enjoyed lunch and got a chance to get some of that good ice cream out there. And we certainly have a well thought out and exciting program for you this afternoon. Our next speaker panelist host is a longtime friend of the chapter. He's got a very long and distinguished biography, and he's asked me to keep it short, so I will do that. The next panel host is the Director of Cyberspace and Information Dominance and Chief Information Officer at Headquarters ACC, where he's responsible for providing support so the Air Force can help combatant commanders out through the command's 34 wings, 19 bases, 70 worldwide operating locations with 98,000 military personnel. And before that small task, he actually had a job as the White House Communications Agency commander, where he had to keep the President, Vice President, National Security Council, White House staff, and White House Secret Service happy, so he thought your customer set was difficult to please. So please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the stage, again, longtime friend of the chapter, Brigadier General Chad Raduege.
All right, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully lunch was good. Have a seat, friends. Hopefully lunch was good and you had an opportunity to hear a very good presentation. It's great to see you all. It's great to see a friend walking up the middle aisle. Sir, it's great to see you. I haven't even gotten to hug you since you got off the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, I had an opportunity to talk to General Wegeman this morning, and then Mr. Marion right before lunch, and I said, I don't know how we got put into this particular spot behind my boss and behind Mr. Marion's powerhouse panel. So they set the bars high. Mr. Marion said, oh, you got the slot right after lunch. So I warned the panel that I was going to kind of be watching who was paying attention, and if we were boring you to death, we were going to make quick adjustments. Hey, listen, the idea of today was one that's been born, gosh, a couple of months ago. I had an opportunity to be down at Alamo AFCEA, supporting our AFCEA event down there. Had an opportunity to be on stage with a couple of my friends. And we said what was neat about that particular panel style was we had a conversation. And we made it an engaging, let's just say we're a bunch of friends going out to lunch, and you want to talk about cyber and ISR and IW. What would that conversation be like? And so the idea was, for this particular panel, was to pull a whole bunch of friends that I have known for a large portion of my career, that I consider thought leaders in our business, that I think are going to bring fantastic perspectives, perhaps challenge one another, and I think that that's a good thing. So, for the next hour plus, I'm either going to have the easiest job or the hardest job. It's going to be easy if I just kind of toss those grenades out there and let this panel of four run at it and exchange some ideas. It may be hard if I have to stop the conversation and pivot a little bit. So please bear with me if you will. Let's see if it's hard or easy. Okay, am I able to, I'm transitioning okay. All right. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, the last 18 months has been a whirlwind. And there's been a lot going on in our United States Air Force. And when you start talking about cyber and ISR and now information warfare, what has taken place in the last 18 months has been pretty spectacular. I arrived at Air Combat Command 18 months ago, just as the cyber mission was transferring from Air Force Base Command back to Air Combat Command. And so the last 18 months has been fantastic. We have an amazingly supportive four-star boss in General Holmes. And then you bring in General Wegeman as our deputy commander with his experience it has been a fun ride. All it takes is to take a look at some of the organization realignments over the last 18 months to see that we're making some progress. And we're actually starting to align a lot of the conversations that many of us have had for years about the way that we need to start organizing and the way that we need to get after this business. Case in point, 24th Air Force and 25th Air Force merging into 16th Air Force, as General Wegeman kind of talked about this morning. He made mention this morning, and I think it's important to note, this is not just pushing two missions together and saying, cyber and ISR, let's get into one organizational alignment. No, ladies and gentlemen, this is really about the conversion, the fusion of different mission sets to get after something bigger. And so now we are able to start having conversations about not only the ISR, but the cyber piece, as well as information warfare, information operations, electronic warfare. We start revisiting a lot of these concepts that we have known for a number of years that we've kind of evolved away from. Now it's coming back. Now on the air staff, we've done similar alignments. So we have combined our A2 and our A6 into a common directorate that we're calling the A26. And now Lieutenant General O'Brien is really getting after that business and is pulling together the right professionals to attack this mission set. And so this is really an exciting time. Now this is just the Air Force piece. You start talking about the natural alignment that's taking place on the joint side as well, and the way that we're starting to fit in with the national structure and the way that our nation is starting to think about information warfare. This is really an exciting time for us. So, we come to this panel, and I've got some power hitters up here. I'm going to do things a little bit different than the way that Mr. Marion did it this morning. I'm going to introduce each of our speakers at times when I tee them up. Now, I said hard and easy. We've already had a little bit of a pre-conversation, and don't be surprised if you hear from one of these seasoned professionals before their allotted time, and that's okay. I still promise that I will introduce them at some point, just so that you know, one, who they are and where they are in our Air Force, because it's exciting. The way that I've kind of structured this, and we've kind of talked about the way that we want to get after this, is to take some of the policy that has come out of the Pentagon. So as the A26 has stood up, used to be Lieutenant General Jameson. She pulled in my good friend, Brigadier General Brad Pyburn, and said, hey, we need to write this thing called a cyber warfare flight plan. What are the lines of effort that we need to get after? How do we need to start thinking about this business? And so my good friend Brad pulled together several of his counterparts and put some meat on the bones. This is teasing out right now, and we're getting to see some fantastic momentum starting to build. It's a familiar chart that you have probably all seen, but we're going to talk through a little bit over the next hour or so some of those 7 lines of effort. And I've asked each one of these professionals on stage to kind of pipe in with their expertise or with their thoughts. And so, if we're ready to go. Oh boy. First one is we start talking about a foundational activity associated with what cyber warfare and information warfare is all about. I thought General Wegeman highlighted it this morning. I thought the panel did a fantastic job of highlighting you start talking about human capital. And so at the foundation level, it's about people. Whether it's carbon, whether it's retaining, whether it's recruiting, whether it's educating and training, whatever it is, what's the workforce that we have? And so it's the human capital that is a foundational piece. So leading us off today is someone that I think is in the middle of this business on a daily basis. He is a permanent professor. He is up at the Air Force Academy as our department chair of the Computer and Cyber Sciences Department. Now in that capacity, he also maintains a Center of Cyber Research. And so he has some fantastic technology perspectives as well. What I love about this Stanford-educated doctor is that he has some operational experience as well. He has been at the base level. He has commanded some of our 24th Air Force units. And so, Colonel Dave Caswell, I would appreciate you launching us in this panel and kind of talking about your perspectives from the Air Force Academy, the way that you retain, train, recruit. How do you bring in those cyber professionals and prepare them for big Air Force?
Yes, sir. So I appreciate that. The fun thing about starting off with human capital, and I'm going to cheat overtly, is everyone on this panel, so I know there's a couple cadets in the room and other airmen, that is the business of everybody's on this panel. Mm-hmm. Our day-to-day, the thing that we are passionate about is as General Wegeman says, the carbon, because that is the fuel that is going to allow us to do this mission. So it's really, really hard in this space. Right? All of the vendors in this area would love any one of our elite talent to go out and do great things in the commercial space, which is frankly also helping our nation be more secure and us be more capable in this. So how do we try to attract these folks? Well, we try to, frankly, sir, be awesome, right? We try to find amazing things. Simple example, I've got a cadet who I don't think is here today. He was snowed out. Cadet Schultz, who just won the President's Cup, which is several thousand professionals across the entire federal government. He was able to go there, compete, do amazing things, and now we go and highlight him and have him go and give the tour for the next young person who's now looking at this service and this idea of how do we join our Air Force. And we show them that there's all this cool opportunity, and more importantly, there's this cool leadership that's going to go take them on and build a trust that's going to be able to really empower them to go and get to that next level, which is the funny challenge, because when we're talking about talent management at the beginning, it's actually, in my opinion, it's talent management at these fine gentlewomen, gentle people's levels. And the better we're able to have this kind of excellence in front of our squadrons and helping lead our folks, I think that's where I think is going to keep them in, because they're going to get the hook, because they're going to say, I want to be Lauren someday. And she's amazing, and what she does changes our world every day, and I'm able to make a difference. And the more we can go tell them that, I think we'll win. We'll keep them in, and we'll build that next force. As soon as we lose that, though, right? As soon as we lose it, I think we have a big challenge. And I think it's particularly hard because, at least in the Air Force, this is a discussion, so I'm throwing this grenade out, if you don't mind, sir. What's the deal of leadership in this? Or is it the technical on the keyboard? Because I'm a technologist. Anyone who knows me knows, like, I go code. Colonel Blackwell always laughed at me before. You code to go relax. It's just who I am. That's some of the kids that we're bringing online. Not kids, right? These soon-to-be airmen at every level that we're bringing onto the fight. How do we reward them for that, but also show that that is only one step? You actually now need to be a leader, because you're not going to be the groups and wing commanders of tomorrow's Air Force by simply being hands on keyboard. That's the starting position, perhaps, but that's by no means even, that's only starting the conversation. So I'd love to know your guys' thought.
So I'll jump in. So I'm going to steal from my bosses a little bit, and I'm going to quote Daniel Pink. I think, we bring them in, we give them a sense of purpose, right? They're going out and doing a mission to defend our nation, and then we give them the leeway to build mastery in that trade. And then we give them autonomy to go out and be experts. And I think the Air Force's talent management program, as it's matured, especially within our 17 S&D career field, is going to give people a lot longer on keyboard and allow them to build that mastery. And that's just going to grow their sense of purpose. And I think we'll be able to retain them just by allowing them to stay on keyboard longer and become experts in their tradecraft.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, so you brought up that these young folks have such an innovative view of the world, and I think a lot of it has to do with culture. So oftentimes we think when we walk into a conference room that the oldest person or the most senior person is going to be the most knowledgeable, and many times they are when you talk about strategy and how we're going to operate, but when you start talking about technical aspects of what we do, oftentimes it's the youngest person in the room. They're a digital native, they grew up on it. Much of the stuff that we learned on is completely obsolete. And oftentimes they're the ones, when you start talking cyber operations, they're the ones who did it. Well, most of us looked, watched, maybe had a little bit of time on the keyboard, right? High five, good job. And so being able to talk their language, but also appreciate the fact that their intelligence and their understanding of this problem set is hugely important to defining how we're going to operate and continue to be effective.
From a retention or even a recruitment perspective, one of the things that I would love to challenge, I've been privileged to talk to some of you guys about some of the amazing missions we do in cyber to really advance our nation's security. It's stuff that sometimes is on the New York Times. I really wish, at least my personal kind of challenge to some of the august body here, is how do we put it on the Air Force Times? How do we show that this team of young airmen are making such an incredible impact, because that's something that, frankly, any of us can go and champion and say, you want a cool, really neat thing that goes and gives you ability to do really empowered capabilities to help protect your nation that you care about? We got to be able to sell that. We got to be able to show that. The Air Force is glorious in its ability to show the amazing capability of the F-16 and the B-1 and the B-2s and all that stuff. It's a little harder to see that, I think, inside of cyber, and that's something that we all, everyone in this room knows the security and how we've kind of gotten to this point, but boy, it would be really empowering the more we could start breaking open and talking overtly about the amazing things that we as a service are doing to find that next generation and show them you can be the next one, right? You can be the next one. We're highlighting on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great point that all of you have made, and ties very nicely with what we heard this morning. We heard this morning about telling your story and telling the cyber story of the contributions that our airmen are making for our nation. General Wegeman and others this morning talked about diversity. So Lauren, as you talk about the new workforce that's coming in and recognizing the talent that you have around the table and getting out of the bureaucratic model that we in the military are accustomed to, when you can surround yourself and be uncomfortable that you're not the smartest one in the room, that's when we start making gains for our Air Force. So I appreciate that. Let me pivot a little bit and get to one of the other foundational activities of the Cyber Warfare Flight Plan, and that's ISR, both for and from cyberspace operations. And so we're in a unique spot where, because of diversity, I get to bring one of my 14N friends up here. You described yourself as the token. I said, no, we're all one group now. We're a competitive category of information warfare. We're no tokens anymore. This gentleman has been at the cusp of the integration of ISR and cyber operations for the last year and a half in his capacity as a commander of the 659th ISRG, so the group up at Fort Meade. And so in his portfolio, he is directly responsible for enabling ISR operations, but then also taking advantage of some of those on-keyboard activities. This particular gentleman, you, my friend, has a remarkable operational background. He has gone through weapons school. He has been on the front lines of Kabul in the ISRD, so our ISR division over there. He has been with JSOC as the deputy J2. He has been grounded in all things ISR and cyber. He and I served together in Hawaii. He was the commander of the DGS unit in Hawaii while I was the ComScon commander. So Doug and I have known each other for a number of years. Ladies and gentlemen, he's going to be leaving command this summer, and he is moving one floor up, where he will be your Cyber National Mission Force J2. And so I think Colonel Doug Smith offers a lot of perspective. And so, Skull, I'd be interested in your thoughts on ISR for and from cyber operations and what that means to you.
Thank you, General. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for the, I'll pay you $5 when we're done for that intro. It is a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to be doing what we're doing right now at this time that we're doing it. As General Wegeman alluded to this morning with the stand-up of 16th Air Force, the convergence of ISR, cyber, EW, information operations, it's exciting. It is incredibly exciting. For my group in particular, you would normally not expect a group commander to say it's exciting when 1/3 of my group is about to leave the group. But it's absolutely the right thing to do. It's absolutely the right thing to do. With General Hawk's leadership and the leadership of the ACC, with General Holmes and General Wegeman, we are making the decision, we have made the decision that we are going to align our cyber operations teams in a way that we all learned how to do it when we studied doctrine and studied military strategy. It's like unity of command, unity of effort. And so for the first time ever, we are going to, from the highest level all the way down to the tactical level, we're going to have ISR airmen sitting right next to the cyber operators, not just for the mission, but every day, every single day. They're going to be assigned to the squadrons that Lauren's going to be overseeing as the group commander. We will have intel airmen sitting in the same squadron, reporting to the same squadron commanders, reporting to the same team leaders, the mission commanders, to the same group commander, wing commander, NAF commander, all the way up the chain. It's taken 12 years to get there, but we've finally gotten there. And I think that's goodness, and I think it shows the maturity of the Air Force recognizing, hey, we're there now, we're ready to start moving out and being aggressive with it. At the exact same time, ISR from cyber, ISR for cyber, we still have our commitment to the National Security Agency as well. And I have airmen that work doing very similar jobs that they're doing in the Cyber Mission Force. They're doing it in NSA as well. And I think that provides us tremendously powerful opportunities as well, because when we talk about retention, we can take an airman and move an airman from the NSA mission to the Cyber Mission Force mission, and back and forth, and back and forth. And that allows us to retain those airmen, allows us to generate their skills and grow their skills even more. And ultimately, we get a better product as an Air Force and better product for the nation by being able to do that. So I think it's absolutely incredibly exciting time for us right now from an intel perspective. ISR for cyber, ISR from cyber, Cyber Mission Force, NSA, I frankly don't lose a lot of sleep over it. I truly don't lose sleep over its Title 10 or Title 50. It is airmen getting after the mission that our nation has called them to do. When we talked briefly about, how do we incentivize our airmen, our cyber airmen, I would say go find your nearest intel officer or intel NCO, because we've lived that for a number of years of how do you incentivize an intel professional to say, how do you buy into the mission? And that's the key, is you just got to buy into the mission. You got to believe in the mission. And we have to make sure every one of our airmen, cyber, intel, whatever it may be, feel value.
Yeah. Very good.
So if I could add just a little bit.
Please.
So as we stood up the mission defense teams and through ACC and through Brigadier General Raduege's leadership, we've realized that ISR for and from cyber is a thread that weaves through those as well. And so within the A326 in our intelligence branch, we've started to develop an ISR for and from cyber, or for and from MDT handbook. So we're using our wing intel function at the base level to be the intel function for those mission defense teams. And a lot of them have never done a cyber intel mission before. So we built this handbook so that we could teach them and give them kind of the easy button to go out and collect intel through cyber. And if they gather intelligence that they think might be useful for other cyber operations, they bring that back to us as well.
I think the other interesting piece about this, so we've talked a lot about data and information, is how we can supplement that ISR in and through cyber with the information that we can get from this commercial data ecosystem, or whatever you want to call it, publicly available information. But we have to be able to layer that information with the information we're getting through our exquisite intelligence apparatus, so that we can see the whole picture, so that we can execute operations against our adversary in a way that is going to be effective against them, not in a way that we think would be effective. And by layering that information in a way, our intel analysts are going to be exponentially more effective. And so then when you pair them with the cyber operators and the EW and the information operators, now we can effectively operate within an information, or maneuver within an information domain, and be successful at information warfare. And I think that was going to be very important.
I agree, Lauren. I think a lot of the folks in the audience right now are actually going to be key mission partners going into the next one, sir. I just jumped ahead to partnership.
You're bridging the gap for me?
I'm helping with the transition, sir. Our partnership with commercial side of the house, whether it be commercial threat intelligence, commercial intelligence from a defense perspective, whatever. I'm a big believer in we have a lot of sensors already. We probably have more sensors than we have people to look at the data.
Yep.
So let's leverage everybody else to get after it, and that is one of the charges in the Intel Flight Plan of how do we leverage open source intelligence or publicly available intelligence, and let that be the groundwork. We start with that because it's out there for all of us, and then we build on it with the exquisite, highly classified stuff that we have.
Absolutely, and so if you look at access as a problem area, so focusing on access to enable operations, right? We can look at it through ISR, and that's one phenomenal way. But between partnerships with both the commercial industry, but also our allies and partners, because there's oftentimes they have free reign and access to countries that we as US citizens, as DoD military members, couldn't walk in. And so once we can start to focus on that access, I think we'll see an exponential growth in our ability to operate within the information environment, non-kinetics, et cetera.
Well, that's great. You have all kind of bridged the gap, and you officially did it, where we talk about our third foundational activity with the Cyber Flight Plan, which really is the partnerships. And so, Lauren, I'd like to ask you in your current capacity, which just happens to be, ladies and gentlemen, on the Joint Staff J39 staff, where she's working special projects as well as innovations. and bringing a unique perspective into the Joint Staff, advising the chairman and the vice chairman on the types of operations that we're trying to get after. I've known Lauren for a number of years. We were in San Antonio together. You were in the Intel Support Squadron across base, taking care of the JWICS enterprise. I was over on the Air Force side trying to run that thing that we call the AFNet. And you were in a happier place than I was most of the days. I don't know if that's true. But I've known Lauren and her fantastic personality. Great experience. She's been in UCOM, working joint cyber. But I also got to know her a little bit on a personal level because she worked here at AFSpace and had some perspectives with our former chain of command that went up to Air Force Space Command. I remember when she promoted to lieutenant colonel, we heard the story about her having sharp elbows from her days running up and down the Air Force Academy basketball court. And so we strategically placed you in the middle, Lauren, so that those sharp elbows could take care of Dave and Skull if necessary. But Lauren, you have a unique spot on the Joint Staff J39 staff where you're getting to work those interagency and joint personalities, relationships. I'd like your perspective, if you would.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So one, thank you for the opportunity to be up here today. This is phenomenal. I feel like I'm sitting between giants. All of the guys up here have done phenomenal things, and as well as you. And so just being able to listen to everything that you guys have to say has been fantastic. So oftentimes folks look at the Pentagon and think, oh my God, I have no desire to go there. It's terrible. But over the last 18 months, we have done so much to transform the cyberspace domain and really lay the groundwork for information warfare and how we do this, not as just a department, but as a whole of government. And so the most recent NSS really set the groundwork to say, hey, we need to bring state, we need to bring DOD, and then the economic apparatus together and really focus on how we're going to prosecute our adversaries in a way that we're doing it together. And then that theme was carried down through the most recent National Defense Strategy, where it said, hey, we really need to have a whole of department approach that plugs into that interagency apparatus. And I think a lot of people look at those documents and they're like, yeah, no big deal, and don't really follow them. But I will tell you that the leadership in this Pentagon now is really focusing on how do we operationalize this. And I think you saw a lot of that through the 2018 elections, where the policy followed through and supported the mission. And so we had a DoD mission set that really plugged into an interagency focus that enabled us to defend our democracy, and that was really interesting. I also think that these documents are really giving us the opportunity to look at this problem set, whether you look at it from a great power competition perspective or you look at it from a cyber perspective. It has opened up the aperture to say, hey, bring forward your innovative ideas. Bring forward the things that you believe will derive the right outcome and for the good of national security. And so I think when you can have an aperture that's really wide at the national level, it keeps it broad and open so that at the airman level, we can align innovative thought with the right talent, with the right capabilities to drive an outcome that's going to support our national security. And so that's been a really exciting time. Now, working with the interagency sometimes can be extremely frustrating, right? If you look across the elements of national power, there's an agency or an organization or a department that is focused on everything except for the I, information. And when you work with the interagency, every department and agency has a different mission set. So they're defining how we maneuver in this information space and how we use data, whether we're using it as a platform or whether we need to secure it from a medium. And so everyone has a different, course of action of how they're going to operate. And so that's made it really difficult. And so with the National Security Council's help all the way down through those department and agencies, we've built great partnerships at the person level. So you know who to call at Department of State to say, hey, so this is what the SecDef is thinking. What is the Secretary of State? And how are they looking at this problem set to really understand where the Venn diagram lines up, and so that we can operate in that space where everybody has a common approach. And I think that each department and agency is understanding that in order to prosecute adversaries like China and Russia, we can no longer do it in a stovepipe approach. And so those partnerships have been key. And I think for the department writ large, being able to use those relationships to not only within the United States, be effective within the United States government, but also to reach out to those key partners and allies, and then industry, and building a bigger team has helped us to start to look at this problem differently, which is going to make us effective when we're prosecuting within the competition realm.
That's fantastic. I failed to talk about Lauren Corshane and how fortunate we are that she's leaving the Joint Staff J3 this summer and will be coming down to San Antonio and taking over the 67th Cyberspace Operations Group. So Lauren, congrats on Group Command coming up.
Thank you.
Thrilled for you. Appreciate your ideas on partnerships and what you see in your world. Dave, I'd like to bring you back in because I think partnerships in your particular business is unique as well. As a department chair at the Academy, you have partnerships with industry, and so we'd love to hear your perspectives.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, sir. I was actually going to ask you, right? The NSS, as we've talked a couple times, so what the audience doesn't know, General Raduege is like, let's see if this group actually, how this discussion goes, and it's gone for 2 hours straight. So we've already had a little bit of a discussion on this, but I think it's worthwhile bringing up. The national security strategy is doing great for an all-of-government type of thing, but when we look at great power competition, all right, my personal view, this is an all-of-nation discussion. It is a government working hand-in-hand in cooperation with the commercial industry, because let's be honest, cyber is primarily built by the commercial industry. At least the way that we've taken it at the Air Force Academy is we've looked at, or I at least look at our role as being in many ways a bridge between industry and the commercial and the private sector with the public sector that we can use either from an academia hat or from close cooperation and partnerships with organizations like ACC, where we can have significant higher level dialogues that is not a contract relationship. It is a discussion about how does commercial industry look at and engage in this broader thing that is cyber, that is vast. I mean, everything from cyber operations to artificial intelligence to just basic business automation, all of the above. Which I think is going to be really, really important going forward, because, again, if I'm looking at how do we, organize in this one versus how does China, the NSS gets us a starting point on it. China is looking at this. I think you gave the example earlier. I thought it was great, right? China Inc., right? And so if I can, sir, I'd like to kind of open it up to the panel, because I think this is a fun dialogue. How do we get there? Because I don't think we can do it alone. It's not purely a vendor kind of contract thing. I think there's some great stuff we're doing. I think enterprise IT as a service, $5 later type of thing, is a huge way forward for us to try to build some of that partnership and take best practices out of the way. But frankly, it's slow in our current approaches. And when we start talking about the actual high fight and the operations and the defensive thing, this is not at the whim of a year-long, multi-year-long contract. This is we need to be in a partnership like tomorrow. So I'd be curious your guys' perspective, frankly, from all the different areas, because frankly, this is where, as much as I love the partnership of Intel and cyber, that also causes problems, because Intel, when we come to commercial sector, has things that's not good either. Yeah. So I want to open it up to hear, how do we get there?
Go, Lauren.
Small one.
So I think one of the speakers brought it up earlier, right? That we are not going against quote unquote hackers anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not a college kid with a sweatshirt, but yet every time we think about operating in the cyber domain, that's the number one image that comes
It's
to your mind,
convenient, right?
We are operating against nation states, and so China Inc. has been my new term, because inevitably you have to look at some of our adversaries from a corporation perspective. If at any time, they don't need taxi drivers, they'll chop off the taxi drivers, then reallocate those manpower to other tasks. And so for every one cyber effects operator, on-keyboard operator that we're producing, they're producing 500. And so every, one defender we have, they have 500 people that are trying to defeat our cyber wall, or whatever you want to call it. And so if we don't take the approach of they have mass in numbers writ large, we have to be smarter, we have to be faster, we have to be able to figure out how we are going to maintain the same concept of being able to be anywhere in the world, anytime, on any platform. The principles are still solid. Mm-hmm. How do you align those with a 21st century thought process and still be able to reach out and touch the adversary anywhere, anytime? That's why I love General Nakasoni's, persistent engagement approach. And I think that while sometimes the aligning intel and ops might cause a problem. We have yet to really garner the effectiveness that we can gain from that relationship and how we can switch between ops and intel and ops and intel and move from blue space to gray space to red space. And when we can align law enforcement authorities to that, I really think we will have the competitive advantage that will make us successful.
I think we're getting there. Maybe not as fast as we want.
Yeah.
But the last 3 years have been good years, and we're getting there. And I think this year will be an incredibly good year as well.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that strikes me from that partnership, when we talk about partnership with industry, and yes, some of it is kind of a vendor relationship, but I really think perhaps the starting point, maybe I'm wrong in my initial statement, maybe it is in Intel. The amount of threat data feeds that are coming out with different companies, different vendors, right? How do we find that common communication? I think it's what General Davis was talking about at lunch, right? This common vehicle for which to communicate those threat feeds so that we can quickly synthesize those and then apply our exquisite, higher levels, classification type of information on top of it so that what, where, when, how. And then are able to respond a little bit faster. So maybe that might be one of those kind of first ones for the data synthesis area.
Yeah, how can you get from sensor to shooter in a time where you can
much faster
have an outcome that is going to be successful? And I think that's part of how do you take the vast amounts of information, so not just information that's coming from exquisite intelligence apparatus systems, but how do you take information, input it into that calculator computer and output something that you can then align your exquisite intelligence apparatus so that you can save time, money, and energy and then still get to the right answer.
I think our national security strategy and our national defense strategy are driving us to think differently, as you kind of alluded to, Lauren. But ultimately, we are in the warfighting business. And so, the partnerships that you both alluded to, on the interagency partnerships that we have, bringing the joint fight together, the industry examples that you used, I think when you bring all of those partnerships together, it helps us prepare for the fight. And so that's what I'm going to kind of bridge into is the business that we're in. And we call it lethality and readiness. And it really falls down in our 3 lines of effort. Offensive cyber operations, defensive cyber operations, and our warfighting comms. And so I'm going to ask Jeff Phillips to step in here. Jeff is currently at Air Combat Command as one of our division chiefs for our information warfare division. We call it the A326, and it's the integration between operations, intel, and cyber and comm and IT, and kludging all of that together to harness that fusion, really, for the command. Jeff is an experienced on-keyboard advocate. He has spent some time at the base level commanding at Masawa. He has been through the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies, but more importantly, he commanded one of our DCO units in San Antonio. Most recently, Jeff has had his experience in General Holmes, our commander of ACC's front office, where Jeff served fantastically for the last year as the executive officer. Unique aspect about Jeff, he brings a nice mindset. 6 years enlisted, actually was at Langley at the time.
Yes, sir.
General Myrose actually signed his officer training school report. I don't know if General Myrose is in the audience, but Jeff, I know that he'd be proud of where you are today. Jeff is getting ready to leave the ACC staff, but he's going to be heading down to San Antonio, and he is going to be your next 67th Cyber Wing Commander. So Jeff, the work that you're doing on the 326K, the way that you're thinking about offensive and defensive cyber operations, I'd be interested in your perspectives.
Yes, sir. I'm going to talk a little bit about the division because I'm really proud of the work we're doing. First, thank you for the opportunity to sit up here with you consummate professionals. I'm so glad you're on my team. So as General Raduege said, ACC took over responsibility for the cyberspace mission in 2018. At that time, General Holmes made the decision to stand up this division. It was the Cyber and Non-Kinetic Division at the time, A326K, and then as 24th and 25th Air Force merged and became 16th Air Force, we transitioned to be an Information Warfare Division. So we have branches in the division kind of around the facets of the tenets of information warfare. We have an offensive cyber branch, a defensive cyber branch, an EW branch, an information operations branch, and an Intel branch that kind of weaves the thread through all of those. And then we recently built a training and integration branch that's really focused on training. From an OCO perspective, we're doing a lot of things to move the ball forward in the organize, train, and equip realm. From an organized perspective, we didn't have to do much because Skull Smith at the 659th and Monty Canode at the 67th Group, they took initiative to solve the unity of command, unity of effort problem, and we're moving forward with that playing a supporting role. From a training perspective, we're fully supportive in standing up the offensive cyber formal training unit down in San Antonio. And that's just the genesis of what we're envisioning in the future will be an IW training group. And there'll probably be a squadron or some kind of entity that's related to each of those facets of information warfare in the future. And then from an equip perspective, we have a great relationship with the A5K and Tom Bodner, really focusing on alternate infrastructure right now and building ConOps to how we maintain those infrastructures in the future and how we continue to use those infrastructures to execute operations and build accesses in the future. On the defensive side, one thing I didn't mention is it's a matrix division. So I'm aligned under the A3, which is great for me because the A3 has a lot of money. And if I go into a staff meeting prepared, sometimes I can get millions of dollars out of Ms. Uchida to get something done, which I love, right? But I also have matrix mission and personnel from the A2 and the A6. So General Raduege has allowed me to run his MDT training mission. So we're doing MDT training, working with the Guard unit to get that done and trying to determine what that looks like in the future. And on the A2 side, I have about 14 people in my Intel branch and doing things like the MDT for and from Cyber Handbook and figuring out how Intel weaves through the other facets of IW. On the DCO side, we are the functional area manager for the CVA Hunt weapon system. So we spend a lot of time working with A5K, trying to figure out what the next iteration of that looks like and how our CPTs, our cyber protection teams, are going to use that weapon system to protect the Air Force missions in the future.
Very good. Lauren, I know you have some perspectives on both OCO and DCO. From where you sit in J39, what are some of the things you're seeing?
So, sir, I think over the last 18 months, a transformation in national policy has enabled us to get to this point where we can have, you know, a Air Force warfare flight plan and being able to actually conduct cyber operations. And so I am extremely proud of the department in being able to push cyber as a traditional military activity that has been a huge part of the policy that's enabled this, and then working through NSPM 13 and then the presidential determinations that enable those. And so it's been really incredible to sit on the joint staff and see how much the Air Force is pushing forward in this domain. And what I think is really key is that not only have we aligned cyber and intelligence, but we're also standing up information operations, the IO career field, and really trying to rejuvenate that. Because when we start talking about information warfare, cyber is really one tool that's part of this bigger campaign. And how do you align different capabilities that allow you to maneuver in this space? And so I think just being able to sit on the joint staff and see how the president's vision down through the chairman has really started to be like, we're just starting to see the results of that in the Air Force. And while the other services are good, quite frankly, we're still head and shoulders above. And so being able to ensure that the organization is aligned with the capabilities that we have and the innovative thought process has just been really great. So
if I could, I'll talk a little bit about the information operations career field. So as the NDA identified military information support operations as a traditional military activity also, we transitioned all of our behavioral scientists to this new information operations career field. It's designated as a 14F career field. Right now there's only about 100 people in that career field, and they don't even have an initial skills training schoolhouse yet. So we're working to stand that up as well. And what we're really envisioning in the future is trying to build squadrons where those 14F individuals can have leadership opportunities so they can grow into senior leaders and be part of the information warfare fight.
Yeah, perfect.
I also think one of the key points too, and we had talked about this earlier, is that I think in the last 18 months, we've also taken an innovative view on how we do defensive cyber operations. And so not just focusing our CPTs on blue space systems and the hunt mission, it's very important. But by standing up the MDTs, we've enabled our defensive cyber ops teams to really go out working on those partnerships with our partners and allies and being able to hunt on the systems where quite frankly, our adversaries are using as cyber ranges. And so being able to find that malware before it's used against the homeland, I think has served us exponentially, especially through the elections, and then we've continued that moving forward. And so having that situational awareness where we can move from defense into offense and back and forth, powered by intelligence, is really been effective.
If I could, sir, I think I'd like to highlight the fact that our service is also invested in our partnership with the Cybersecurity Directorate, the brand new Cybersecurity Directorate at NSA. You know, we actually have, you know, not only our Air Force, our airmen from our normal NSA billets, we now have service-retained airmen in the Cybersecurity Directorate at NSA, which is allow us to leverage that partnership with NSA in direct support of protecting our weapon systems, our U.S. Air Force weapon systems, our Air Force bases. And I think that's a novel thing that, 3 years ago, we probably would never have been able to get there. But with the stand-up of CSD, with the successes we had from the 2018 elections, it is just a different mindset of looking at security and cyber as a whole of government, big tent, everybody working together to get after the mission.
Yeah.
But then if you tie it back to human capital, we've done so well, we've set the bar so high, so speaking from a joint perspective, we have to be able to train and retain airmen, the right numbers to be able to continue, because it's not going to slow down. The ops tempo is just going to get bigger. As we look at the 2020 elections, it's not just Russia, it's Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And so being able to translate that mission into the service's ability to provide the requisite level of capabilities, and not just capabilities, but ready airmen that we can push forward to support the combat command mission or to support service requirements is going to be key.
Well, this is kind of interesting is at the same time we're improving on the cyber one, there's a huge kind of, I would argue, almost a digital kind of transformation. I joke with some folks, it's about 4 years ago, the Air Force decided that coding was not a fad, and might actually be something we need to think about. And so now we're actively doing a lot of development, good development for trying to identify, develop, even try to incentivize software development capabilities, which is a direct feed for, how awesome would it be if we have a young airman or a big A airman, any style of airman who is passionate about coding, likes to go do that. They go work perhaps in acquisitions under a materiel command for a little while, and then you know what? They've already got the skill sets and chops, so they can quickly go into the cyber mission and take that same skill set and apply it in a more creative, perhaps, way towards that kind of mission. The challenge is, how do we get more, right? I mean, there's just such a need for this kind of, a growing need for this, and it's not just 17 series, it's the 14 series, it's the K prefix acquisition officers and the entire enlisted crew who are going to need to be able to support that. Organized training, equipping, and getting them there quickly and in time of need while we're already late. And that's going to be kind of the challenge that we've got to figure out how to overcome as a service in order to maintain that level of superiority that we're proud to say, at least I think we are, I know I am.
This truly is an exciting time, and several of the speakers kind of referenced that. When we try and build out our DCO and OCO capabilities as a nation, we also have to account for some of the traditional comms. So as I joined the United States Air Force, my first assignment was with General Myros at the 3rd Combat Comm Group, Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And that job entailed, thinking about expeditionary communications. It seems over the last 20 some odd years, as we've been fighting Islamic terrorists around the globe, we have shifted in our mentality of the way that we used to think about expeditionary comms and warfighter comms. We're seeing a shift back to thinking about things a little bit differently. And a lot of it started with the National Defense Strategy, where we started talking about the competition, the fight against near-peer adversaries. And so what would a cyber contested environment, a limited ops environment look like against a Russia or a China? And how do we extend these capabilities that these leaders are talking about out to the tactical edge? We have gone from a mindset where we still send entire fighter wings into Al Udeid Air Base, where we have had the same infrastructure in place for 20 some odd years. What happens if we have to start thinking about a different type of fight? We have started using this term called ACE, Agile Combat Employment, where we start talking about how do we scatter our forces and stay ahead of the adversary's OODA loop. General Wegeman kind of referenced that this morning. But how do you stay nimble enough? One of the things that I remind our teams all the time is that those far end distant points, that tactical edge that we're talking about, still requires connectivity. And so some of the warfighting skill sets like combat comm and engineering and installation and HF communications, these are things that we have to continue to think about. But to tie it in with what this DCO and OCO discussion is all about, maybe there's an opportunity for us as we start moving forward to think about those capabilities on the tactical edge, and what would that look like? We got to see a little bit of a glimpse of that during the elections, where we were actually putting teams forward and seeing what that looked like. Really getting in the adversary's face. That's pretty unique. That required connectivity out there, and it required a different kind of mindset. But those are some of the things that we're talking about right now. So as we start talking about readiness and lethality, it really rounds out OCO, DCO, and our warfighting comms. And all three of these components are going to make us and keep us the most feared force on the planet. We're going to end with the cyber warfare plan just because all of the panels this morning talked about it. Each of you have talked about it as well. How do we keep refreshing? We cannot get stale in the way that we're maintaining our relationships. We can't get stale in the type of people that we're bringing in and the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. Some of that is human capital, and we've kind of talked about that. Some of that is technology. And so I would like to kind of tee up to each of you, and Dave, maybe I'll start with you. Will you just talk about, especially in your hat right now, where you have a center of cyber research, where you're seeing firsthand the technology that is out there. What are some of the enabling or emerging technologies that you're seeing?
So I guess I can carry on the term that I think has been thrown out on every other one. Zero trust, I think, is one of the predominant ones that we need to get to sooner as a capability and as a cert for the service. Other technologies, I do a lot of talks on artificial intelligence and what's real versus what's just hype in artificial intelligence. In cyber, in this domain, when we're talking about the speed of, the OODA loop, we're talking about milliseconds. Well, as soon as your OODA loop becomes milliseconds, you need to have some kind of automation that's supporting it. And whether it's AI and a neural network or just, an intelligent person saying that there's a script that says this is an indicator of compromise, I don't really care. I need to have millisecond OODA loops. And so we've got to find ways to go and develop any kind of, purchase, acquire, whatever, incorporate any type of technology that helps make sure that our defensive posture is as healthy as possible on a near real-time basis, which is incredibly hard. And one of the reasons why I think zero trust, identity, and all of that is really kind of the coin of the realm right now, because we've got to find a way to get off of the idea of a CAC card, allow our airmen to be able to operate in a contested environment anywhere in the world at any time without having to worry about some of the artifacts that our current network architecture just prevents us from actually being able to do. I think General Pyburn, you mentioned him earlier, he used to, sir, Dave, why is it that I'm sitting as ACC and I've got more connectivity on my cell phone? Well, maybe that's the right answer. And what does that do to really change and enable airmen to be anywhere in the world, globally operating, able to go do the missions that they need to support without hampered, supported by, not hampered by, our technological capability. Yeah. Those are at least a couple, sir.
Perfect. Jeff, you're doing a lot of the integration work on OCO and DCO, as we discussed at ACC. What sort of emerging technologies are you and your team kind of driving toward?
So this isn't technology specifically, but one thing we're focused on is integration. What does integration look like for information warfare in the future? And so we spent a lot of time working with New Mexico Tech Institute on a Plius training facility. I envision that might be the information warfare knitter of the future. So New Mexico Tech bought this abandoned mining village. It's 15 miles north of the border. It's in the middle of nowhere, 25 miles from the nearest grocery store. They set up an EMS environment out there. There was 250 houses at this location when the mining company abandoned the village. They put DirecTV in every house, internet in every house. They bought old cell phone equipment from cell phone companies, so they built a big footprint out there. It allows our EC-130s from Davis-Monthan to fly over and fire at will without having to worry about interfering with anybody else's communications. And so a smart major on my staff that said, hey, we can make this better. We can make this an integration area. And so he developed these proofs of concept. He went out and bought $20 software-defined radios and placed them all over the range. And the EC-130 and the RJ flew together from home station, conducted operations, and they were, for the first time ever, able to go back and do true shot validation based on the data they collected off these $20 radios. So this is just an ingenious major on the staff that's getting after what it looks like in the future. And then, proof of concept 3, he built an instantiation of the joint I/O range, built a temporary SCIF out there, got some cyber operators to work in conjunction with the EC-130 and the RJ, and they were able to conduct a kind of integrated operation against this range. So I think it's going to keep progressing, and I'm excited to see what it's going to be like in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Lauren, you actually have innovations in your title, and from your perspective on the Joint Staff and J39, what sort of emerging technologies are you seeing or being discussed?
So I get to work in a really little niche area, so everything I do is focused from an offensive perspective on how do we have a national security effect against our adversaries. Most of everything I do is really in the compartmented arena, but what's really interesting about the technologies, everybody can guess what the technologies are. It's going to be something that enables you to get something on somebody else's device to have an outcome or an effect. Where we've been really successful is trying to ensure that as that technology comes forward, there is a concept of operations that's written, and there is an operational owner, and that we have innovative people are thinking about how you can align this capability with a concept of operations that fits into a bigger influence campaign. And so if we look at the end state of influencing our adversaries to either de-escalate or to stop doing what they're doing, that technology becomes one piece of the puzzle. And so it's been very interesting to be able to find those technologies, throw that puzzle piece on the table, and then everybody else's puzzle pieces to figure out get as close to a square or a circle or whatever that outcome is going to be. And then really understand how you can take that campaign plan, that focus, and then drive the acquisition, whether it's a short-term acquisition, whether it's a long-term acquisition, but being able to pivot the big A acquisition in a manner that drives the appropriate level of funding to the appropriate owner, so that if you're looking at a long-term acquisition, the service understands the purpose, what's the what, the so what, and what's next of that emerging capability. A lot of times we've found that in some of the rapid capability locations, they are phenomenally smart. They're building capabilities that can do God's work, but it hasn't been aligned to an operational mission. And so oftentimes those capabilities sit on a shelf somewhere, they get a lot of dust until an enterprising young captain or lieutenant says, well, I can take this and I can align it with that and we can have an outcome. And so we're really trying to operationalize that from a global perspective.
Very good. Doug, I would argue that our ISR community has been out in front on a lot of implementation of emerging technologies. DCGS that you commanded is a perfect example. What are some of the things that you're seeing in your world?
So sir, I think the biggest thing from the ISR perspective is we're swimming in data already, and as we try to bring in more data, from the commercial sources or whatever the case may be, whatever the tool is that will allow the machines to do what machines do well, so the human analysts can do that analytical job. That's what we want. That's what we want. Indications, scripts, that's easy. The so what, the analytical so what, that's what we need our airmen to be able to focus on. So I don't know if the answer is AI or ML or other two-letter acronyms. I want more of it because I want airmen to be able to do the analytical work they do. Yeah. From my next job, what I'm very excited about is how do we take things that have become very routine for us, which is airborne ISR, and use those things as potential cyber vectors, whether it be air-enabled cyber, space-enabled cyber, so that we can get after our adversaries on part of their networks that may not be IP-based. And I think that's a very fascinating thing for us to look at.
Absolutely. Exciting. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I have received a whole number of questions, and I appreciate it. We're gonna rattle through in the next 15 minutes as quick as possible. Two of the panel members spoke about the power of PAI. How do you intend to implement the DoD PAI directive in a way that ensures airmen are responsibly accessing PAI from their weapons system, i.e. the NIPRNet?
So we actually had a meeting about this 2 weeks ago in the Pentagon. So the Mr. Rude OSD policy and the DepSecDef chaired the meeting, and DepSecDef, and focused on this exact question. So there is a policy, DoD policy, that looks at publicly available information, and what this meeting was meant to be is how do we define the use across the board? Because while many of us up here are looking at how do you use publicly available information to do something to an adversary. So how do you use it from an information to an intelligence perspective to apply the appropriate analytics? Whereas folks in recruiting commands maybe just want to get the message out to the appropriate pool of people to say, hey, you want to join the Air Force. And so really, how do you align a policy that can cover down on this entire spectrum? It's a really difficult problem. And so the first meeting went to look at, like, what are the bins of, where are the areas that we want to use publicly available information? And I think there's probably a green area that says, hey, we're using it for recruiting, it's completely above board, and this information we need to be able to ingest to support the DoD writ large. To the far end of it, where we are using it and it's going to be covered by some sort of measures that's going to protect the planning and the usage of it, but having a policy that meets our values from a national perspective all the way down to the operational perspective. There are some really great use cases at the classified level that show how we have been effective in arming our operators on the ground with publicly available information that has literally kept them alive. And so those are the things that are driving senior leaders to really open the aperture on how we look at publicly available information. So not just hitting the easy button and saying it's intel, it should all be covered under 12333, because it's really not the case. It's information and it's unclassified until we do the so what and then the what's next. And so I'm really proud of the senior leadership of really opening up the aperture and having the right discussion, so we'll see where it goes.
Doug, I think you were the other one.
Yeah, so sir, I would just say from a PAI perspective, it is a source of information. It is a source of information, and in many cases, it could be the information that we need to get after our mission set. It's incumbent upon us to figure out how do we do it where we protect the civil liberties that exist, as well as do it within the known bounds of what we're supposed to be doing. I don't know if we're there yet, but I know we're using PAI responsibly and maturely right now for some of our mission sets that we're doing. And we're doing it with our mission partners across the IC, across law enforcement, and across the interagency.
Perfect, thanks. Dave, I'm coming to you. You referred to the human aspect as being the most important. Air Force CyberWorks solves problems by focusing first on human needs. For some of our brightest airmen, the enlisted and officer career paths do not meet their human needs. Talk about empowerment and leadership and expectations. The Army is doing some work on the way that they're experimenting, developing. The question is, why not experiment with the human factor with a proven talent system?
With a proven what now?
Talent system.
Proven talent system. So first I'd challenge, like, what's a proven talent system? I mean, I think Mr. Manasco is a big champion of the competitive categories. I'm super excited to see where that's going to take our Air Force, because that allows the cultural kind of tribes that have all been in a mix, and to finally kind of congeal to some identities, at least on the officer side. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at that for how do we do talent management. One of the things, and several of the members on this panel, I think all of the members on this panel have had the opportunity to be to a development team. And I find that's one of those things I wish we could unveil, the kind of conversation and the kind of one-on-one care that every single name that comes across that panel's table is looked at, right? Where is this person? Where do they want to be? What's good for their family? Does anyone know this person? How can we help them get to that goal that would make them be more successful in whatever success means for them? Between that kind of conversation, which has been, I think, relatively recently, in the last decade or so, really kind of empowered, between the competitive categorization ability, so we can actually start looking at groups and allowing you to thrive in the identity that you're able to drive, And even some of the systems that are slower than we'd like, but are coming on board, where it allows people to have an overt discussion that says maybe my last job isn't the full definition of my capability or what I perceive of value and use in the Air Force, my vector and some of those kind of systems. Are they perfect? No. Is it an active and passionate attempt for us to go and try to be able to hand manage all of these elite talents? Yes. And it's exciting to see where it's going to go. You know, having talked, and sir, I know you have more of these conversations than we are privy to, but every conversation I've had, this is not a vague attempt. This is an active engagement because everyone, from the chief of staff on down, truly believes that it's a per-person Air Force, and we've got to go develop in that area.
Dave,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I could tag on to that, so I think one of the needs that was not being met previously as well is building depth in your weapon system. Yeah. You know, we had an Air Force model, especially for the 17s, that you would go do one cyber ops assignment, then we expected you to do something else, so we could build you as a leader. I think we're transitioning away from that, and so I'm a firm believer in building personal and professional success, and that there's a big focus, like Dave said.
I agree with you, Munster. The way that we have kind of switched from a breadth to a depth model, I think is going to pay dividends. I think it's fair to assume, though, that this is not just officers that are being managed this way.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think is so exciting. Mr. Marion and the work that he's doing on the civilian front to bring in and manage further down our GS structure of the way that we're talent managing those important skill sets. On the enlisted front, there's getting ready to be announced some big changes, and General O'Brien is holding that right now to make sure that we implement properly. But there's this concept that we've been working the last several years called an agile cyber training structure. And it really is about talent management. It's really about taking care of our enlisted force and giving them just-in-time training for the job that we're asking them to do. And so as we look to move them from one location to another, how do we give them the skill sets that are required to go and be most successful in those jobs? So I think it's across the board, and I see our Air Force really shifting in the way that they're thinking about this talent management structure. So thank you for that question.
I think one other piece is that this is the first time, I think, since I've been in the Air Force, where we're giving the individual the opportunity to say, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a big paradigm shift. And so it really is incumbent on people to say, hey, I have this skill, or I really want to go to this location. I can count a list of folks that have gotten out of the Air Force and like, well, hey, my closet, hobby was I programmed these big things. I came up with this.
It's not a closet. I do it overtly.
but they ended up getting out of the Air Force because we didn't know that, and it could be a function of we didn't hear it, which is possible, or they didn't say it because they were afraid that if I don't follow this very rigid structure, I'm not going to get promoted or I'm not going to make it to the next level. And so it's time for the people to start being very vocal on the things that they either can or want to do as well.
And if I can double down on it, right? Mr. Manasco, I've been very fortunate to be able to talk to Mr. Manasco, General Kelly, and they're all in. Like the competitive category, this is the information warfare competitive category. It's ours to own. It's ours to figure out how best to go take care of the unique talent that it comes into that kind of capability. And that's, like you said, big A, right? Officer, enlisted, civilian, all of it. That's amazing. Do we know how to do it? No, I mean, absolutely not. But are we working it? Yes. And are we now empowered by leadership to be able to do so? Yes. That's the exciting opportunity.
We'll make this our last question, and then I'm going to ask you to each offer some concluding remarks. We've talked a lot about the good news stories that we get to see on a daily basis. And so how do you tell your story? So the question is this: how do we inform all of our cyber airmen about what is going on in their career fields so that they are excited about tomorrow and are making tactical decisions in line with strategic goals?
Tell it more.
Tell it more.
Early, often, right? Preacher from the choir. But I think a lot of it is our own limitations in terms of our classical perception of what's classified and what's not. We need to break down those barriers. We have to be able to say the amazing things that airmen are doing and not just leave it to the New York Times. We need to be able to stay it up at every commander's call, every event like this, and highlight the amazing things that we are doing to protect democracy in our country. And I think that the more that we are provided that authority, and that's where I think a lot of the combinations we're talking about with the 2.6 and all of that will hopefully start to open those doors, because it allows us to communicate better this amazing story.
I think it's part of the culture. We have humble servant leaders. And so when they do amazing things, the last thing people want to do is stand up and say, well, I did this and it was fantastic. But at some point, in order to keep these airmen, we have to be able to do that. And so it's a blend of either having classified forums where we can bring as many folks forward and say, here are the great things that happened. Here's the story behind the elections. Here's the story behind the Iran strikes. And oh, by the way, you read in the press, like, we pulled back the fighters and we pushed it up in the cyber domain. And that's a really interesting to understand that thought process and what senior leaders were thinking. That gets me excited. It gets me excited just to think that in this global competition, we were the leading edge. We made a difference, and the president all the way down understood that. And so I think it's really a function of we have to be better at telling that story at every level and being very precise about the things that cyber, information warfare, all of these information-related capabilities and how we maneuver in this space are actually effective, and people are starting to look at it as the primary option, vice where can I put a TLAM, or where can I fly fighters? And so it's really a problem that we have to figure out an innovative way to solve.
Yeah, it's our leadership mandate. It really is. Okay, I'm going to come down the line. We've got 6 minutes left. So Jeff, I'd like to ask for any concluding comments that you may have.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll say I'm optimistic. So I think we had a meeting yesterday, and one of the comments that was made, we can't let cyber policy slow down cyber operations. And I'm optimistic that cyber policy is moving in the right direction. We have things like the National Cybersecurity Strategy. We have things like NSPM 13 that expedited execution of cyber operations. And so we're moving in the right direction. I think it's up to us as leaders to continue that momentum and empower our airmen to generate outcomes for America.
Fantastic, thank you.
So I'll conclude with so General Silveria, the superintendent of the Air Force Academy, is talking at tomorrow's luncheon, and he might say this, so don't tell him if I ruin one of his punchlines, but he goes around as part of his job talking about the Air Force Academy, and really kind of just trying to help recruit, from all kinds of different venues. And what he has found is that he is often asked more about what is cyber. So the U.S., this, how do we retain and recruit? They want to come. They want to be a part of this team, which is super exciting. The challenge is really going to be towards that last question, right? How do we keep them? And I know that's something that we're all working for. I know we all wish we had the answer right now, but the good news is they want to be part of the team. So I'm with you. I'm optimistic.
I think I would carry the same theme. It has never been this much fun to operate in the cyberspace domain, and really looking forward to what information warfare and how do you create this puzzle? Because inevitably, most of the policy, we're writing it and we're throwing it against the wall and we're seeing if it sticks. And a lot of times we have the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's because we're doing talent management properly. And that's because we are building innovative leaders, and they have thoughts that are really driving forward how we can do business. And it comes from the lowest level all the way up. And so I'm just excited. I think that the innovative ideas and the concepts of operation are the things, because if they're the right answer at the right time, it's what changes policy. And so if we can wrap our mind around thinking outside of a self-imposed container, we will continue to maintain a competitive advantage, and we will continue to have the superiority that we experience today.
I don't think I should change anything, sir, so I'll just echo what my teammates have said. It is the most exciting time in my 26 years to be in the Air Force right now. And I would trade in a heartbeat to be a second lieutenant graduating from the Air Force Academy, joining this team, because now we have the mission. It's a recognized mission. Stealing what General Wegeman said this morning, we have the authorities, we have the responsibilities, we have the resources, and we have the right partnerships in the mindset as airmen. All we got to do is just get after it right now, because we got all the right leadership structure in place to be able to get after it, and we have brilliant airmen who want nothing more than to do this job. So we just got to get out of their way.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd say my word is inspired. I'm inspired to serve each day because of the airmen that you see on the stage, the missions that they represent, the partnerships that we're developing, what we're doing between academia, the military service, and our industry partners, and the way that all of those things are coming together is phenomenal right now. And so this is a very inspiring time to serve our nation. You know, I think about the bumper sticker at the bottom of that cyber flight plan, and this is why we serve each day. We're projecting power, we're defending our own power projection, and we're securing the global command and control. General Wegeman spent a lot of time talking about JADC2, our Joint All-Domain Command and Control. And what I think is so exciting about that is this is a new model that our Air Force is beginning to think about. And not only the Air Force, but the Air Force in a leadership role. Pulling our joint partners in with this and thinking about warfighting in a new domain and a new way of doing business. And what's inspiring is that all of that foundational stuff for JADC2 is all on the backs of these fantastic airmen that are so excited, so motivated each day to deliver offensive, defensive, and warfighting comms. And so I'm just humbled and inspired to show up each day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll offer a round of applause for this panel right here, fantastic. Thank you.
General Raduege, on behalf of the chapter, we'd like to add our thanks to you all taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here and help us out with the panel. Always a pleasure and good to see you all again.
Great. Thanks, Rich. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. Take care. Thanks, appreciate it. Good comments. Okay. At this point, all of you that have been diligently recording your continuing education credits in your agenda for all your professional certifications as you go on, you're not going to want to miss our next event. We're going to let you take a break here in a couple minutes in the event hall, but at 15:30, right behind us, all the way around in the Colorado Hall, we're going to have our first tech talks of the symposium. It's kind of a little new spin on what we're doing. Both Cisco and Forescout will have some very technical presentations that they'll put on for you. I hope you enjoy those, and then come back here at 16:30. Join us again for today's grand reception by, again, Forescout and Carasoft, and then I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 7:30 for breakfast sponsored by BlackBerry. Thank you for attending, and have a good afternoon.